Hey everyone, it's Lost, and I'm back with another deck for you to play while climbing that ladder to Mythic. Alright, so let's get into the deck. It's going to be another best of one Esper list, but instead of the fun mid-range creature style of the video before, we're going to veer a little bit off towards the dark side of control. Now this is going to be an Esper Acuity list that I went ahead and updated with War of the Spark. This deck saw a pretty decent amount of attention at the beginning of Allegiance, and kind of fizzled off towards the end, with traditional Teferi lists taking the top spot. The reason I'm such a fan of this deck is because I'm a big best of one guy, at least until Nexus of Fate rotates out. And this deck has amazing matchups against pretty much everything that's popular right now in best of one. So the idea of this deck is to gain a bunch of life and draw a bunch of cards, and essentially go get a win condition from your sideboard. You're going to gain all of that life and draw all of those cards through a fun card called Dovin's Acuity. Now, when Dovin's Acuity enters the battlefield, you're going to gain 2 life and draw a card. And then whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase, you return Dovin's Acuity to the owner's hand. Now, you have a really good suite of instants in this deck, which is going to create a playstyle of control that you might not be used to or familiar with, but it is called essentially a tap-out control style. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to be casting a bunch of spells, doing a bunch of things. You're going to be tapping all of your mana during the main phase of your turn each turn. So you're going to have plenty of removal and disruption through the instants and sorceries that you do have in the deck. Cards like Thought Erasure and Duress can really kind of foil your opponent's plans. And you're going to have really good removal in cards like Mortify and Moment of Craving, Vraska's Contempt. All of these cards are going to bring you a lot of value and just keep you going. You're also going to have really good sweepers in Cry of the Carnarium and Kaya's Wrath. Cry of the Carnarium is very, very good against mono white, and Kaya's Wrath's good against just anything that has creatures. And you're also going to have a really good suite of just good stuff Esper cards like Teferi Time Raveler and Enter the God Eternals and Commence the Endgame. Now, most of your matchups are actually going to be won by your opponent conceding. This deck is going to be really good at just shutting down opponents' decks and making them feel helpless. If for some reason you don't get a concede, which tends to happen pretty quick, or Commence the Endgame doesn't just actually get you there, you can go ahead and get a win condition from the board, which most of the time is going to be your Lyra or your Jace, which is going to be kind of a fun card that we get to play with too. Now, just make sure that before you do cast these, you're going to be in a pretty good condition, or you're in a pretty good spot to protect them. But overall, right now, this deck is really powerful, especially because of just how good it is against mono red. Now, if you are one of those people, like many, I'm sure, that keep running into a ton of mono red and it's just very frustrating to you, I only have a couple of games from the stream yesterday, but let's go take a look at this deck in action. Alright, so this first game here is going to be against Larum. I believe that he is playing a traditional Esper list, and I just wanted to show a couple of the interactions in here so you guys can kind of see how it plays out. I do actually prefer the Esper Acuity list in this matchup. It has cards that are just very, very, very good, as you'll see here in a second, like Unmoored Ego, that can just absolutely shut the entire other deck down. We do have a pretty good opening hand here. We have our Acuity, which is always nice to have. We have Mortify, which is going to be a good removal piece. Dovin's Veto, in case we are running into some kind of a control mirror or anything like that. So, just a pretty solid overall hand, plus we had all of our lands that we needed. Now, we draw into Baby Teferi here, which is just always a comfortable feeling to have in your hand. It's always a really good feeling, too, to have the counterspell for the Thought Erasure here. Now, Baby Teferi is overall phenomenal, but really good in this list in particular, because as you are playing a tap-out control list, it's a really comfortable feeling knowing that no matter what you do isn't going to get counterspelled during your turn. So guaranteeing cards like Unmoored Ego and Narset to go off is really comfortable. I actually don't Unmoored Ego here because I'm not 100% sure what Esper list he's playing. And I have Unmoored Ego'd before and it has just instantly won me the game, and I have Unmoored Ego'd and I completely whiff and it was just a waste of a turn. So I try to wait a little bit longer to get a little bit more interaction. Either way, he's going to have to remove the Teferi, or I am going to be able to cast it without fear of being countered anyway. So buying a little bit of more time was comfortable in this position. We do go ahead and Unmoored Ego here, and we go for a big Teferi because I just had a feeling, and we luckily hit. And we do get all 4 of his Teferis here. And make sure that when you are unmoored egoing someone, that you really take your time and look through their deck to find what they have, how many counterspells, how many win conditions you have to worry about. It's very important information that you get that you're going to want. It's going to depend on how you end up playing the later half of the game. Now, he does actually end up conceding after this because we are just in too good of a position and he knows it, which is always a good thing. And it's how most of your decks are actually going to, or how most of your games are actually going to end. Alright, in game 2 here, we are going to play against Sio Masaki, however you pronounce his name. Sorry if I butchered that, buddy. But he is going to be playing a mono blue list, which you don't see too often anymore. I think it's kind of fallen out of favor for some of the other lists. This is going to be an okay matchup for us. We do have a lot of interaction and a lot of removal for them, and cards like Dovin Vito and Narset just got a lot better. So if you can actually manage to stick those, you're going to be in a much better position than you normally would. Now we have an opening hand that's pretty good here. We have most of our colors, but we do not have a shock land. So it's going to be a little bit of a sketch keep, but as anybody that actually watches my streams know, I like to keep really bad keeps sometimes and, you know, live on the edge and top deck like a boss, which doesn't always happen, but in this situation it does. So he didn't actually have turn 1 drop into turn 2 Curious Obsession, which is definitely the most frightening part about this deck. It is one of those combinations that you just lose to most of the time. We did have the counterspell for his Curious Obsession when he went to cast it, so after this we were just looking to be in a really good position. He didn't do a whole lot. He did end up counterspelling our Narset, which was never fun, and we kind of just took a bunch of little pings. But luckily, he just didn't have the card draw. Not having that Curious Obsession is really detrimental to mono blue. So we were able to just grind him out, keep our life totals high, and answer any of the creatures that he did play. And we ended up, I believe, getting the concede once we ended up getting our Lyra on the board. Alright, and for our final game, we're going to be playing against Ultra Canur, yep, you get the idea. I am absolutely terrible at pronouncing people's names. But I believe this is actually going to be another Esper list, and we have an okay hand here, especially against aggro. We have a bunch of removal, we have life gain, we have card draw, and we do have our land, so we're going to keep it. Unfortunately, we are playing against control, which it isn't the best control hand. We do get Thought Erasure in early, and he does go ahead and get our counterspell out. So we're actually looking a little bit behind. We're not nearly as good of a start as last game. He does run out an Augur of Bolas, which I love that card, honestly. I haven't actually had a chance to play with it too much since it got back. Now, we do have a good, very well-timed counterspell for his Kaya. Getting that Kaya on the board is frightening. That card, if you don't answer it directly, will just win the game eventually. Very long and grindy. But it's kind of an uneventful matchup for the most part. We really don't do a whole lot. We get Commence the endgame, and luckily the spell just can't be countered, which is fantastic. And we get a big 6/6 on the board, and we have a bunch of support for it. And what happens here is he ends up, I know that he has one counterspell in his hand, so I know that he is going to counterspell my Mastermind's Acquisition because you just have to. So immediately following that up with an Unmoored Ego, he ended up just conceding, which again is just how a lot of these games end up playing out. So we end up getting the 3rd win in a row with this deck and end up doing pretty well overall for the stream. I ended up climbing a little bit, but not too much. I ended up playing another deck that I'm going to do another video about, which unfortunately didn't go so great, but it was still fun and entertaining, so I will bring that out to you in a future video. I'll have a link to this deck down below, so you can import it directly into your game if it's a deck that you want to give a shot and try out on your own. If you did enjoy this video and you want to see more, let me know down in the comments what you would like to see, if there's any decks that you want to see me play on stream, or that if you have any ideas. Also, feel free to go ahead and like this video and follow me over on Twitch and Twitter. I do stream on Twitch every Monday through Thursday starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to go ahead and have links to both of those down below as well. Thank you for watching, and until next time.